Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's August 22nd. This is going to be our chart lesson for the day, and we're going to wrap up the week today. No chart lessons on Fridays. Most of you know that by now, but I stopped doing them on Fridays quite a while back. Just got to be too much trying to do these every day. So I usually don't. I usually only trade for about an hour or two on Fridays, and I'm done, and I cut out of here and start my weekend a little earlier. Um, thing about these videos, I mean, it's 15 or 20 minutes for you guys. Sometimes, if I go long, 30 minutes, but that's 30 minutes plus I have to process the video and upload it. And so it's a lot goes into these things, a lot more than people would realize. I probably spend an hour to probably on average an hour to hour and a half every day I do these, sometimes as much as 2 hours. Um, so there's a little work that goes into them. So um, I was really trying to do them 5 days a week was really getting to be too much. So it feels about right doing them 4 days a week, and that gives everybody a chance to compare their trades to what I'm seeing 4 days a week. And I still continue to get lots of good feedback about the videos, how they help people, and how well people are doing with these with price action in general, not just the videos, but just learning price action. So that's great. That's why I do these. Uh, but anyway, keep this video from getting too long itself. But I just wanted to kind of explain why I quit doing them on Fridays for anybody that's new or anything. So just got to be a little bit too much. But anyway, a lot of movement today. Kind of a crazy day. I think the market got spooked early. We had some FOMC information come out yesterday. I guess they spoke at Jackson Hole, Wyoming or something, and I think there's some real confusion about whether interest rates need to be lowered or raised or whatever, and I think that really spooked the market because I think the market already had kind of priced in another cut, and now they're saying they didn't know if they wanted another cut, and then we got some information today that says that manufacturing's slowing, so there's to me it looks like rates need to be cut, but I'm no economist, so um, I'm just a trader, so they're not going to listen to me. But anyway, I do invest in real estate and own quite a bit of real estate, thanks to my trading over the years as well. It's helped me to invest in real estate. If you do well at this, eventually, if you make money as a trader, eventually you need a tax write-off. So the way I do it is I invest in real estate. So just a little personal note about me there. So most of you know that if you've been around a while, but if you're new, you may not know that. That's my other. I basically, rather than say I'm a trader, I say I'm an investor because I'll invest in anything that I think I got an opportunity to make money. So, but anyway, you can see it looked like we were kind of like yesterday. It looked like we were going to be range bound here, and we were heading towards the lows. Here we are. We thought we're going to bounce, and then boom, the bottom falls out of. This was like a falling knife, and it just got steeper right here. I think this spooked a lot of people when it went on lower here. People got scared. But you can see this is where the smart traders start nibbling, saying this thing's way overdone, and you can see that they are smart because they start nibbling down in here, and we start to find some support. And the next thing you know, we've bounced 25 points. And if you can come in here and buy up and get 25 points by the end of the day, you've done really well. And that's what happens. It's just we just got a little bit oversold here, and it was obvious when you get that far away from the EMA and you've been away from it we touched it up here at say 9 o'clock hour, and we didn't come back to it till almost 10 o'clock, 9:41 or so, 9:40. That's over, that's almost 45 minutes there. And that's a long time to be away from the moving average. Um, so, and you can see prices just do not stay away from that moving average very long. Even on this uptrend, we kept coming back to it. And generally, you'll keep coming back to it. So that's we don't really use the EMA to determine our trades. We just use it as a tool to help us determine what prices. If prices are consistently below that EMA and it's pointing down, then you're in a downtrend. Whether you can draw these trend lines correctly or not, you're in a downtrend. And so that helps those people that aren't really skilled at drawing their trend lines yet. And then if we're consistently above it, even though we're peaking, poking below it here and there, occasionally we're still mostly above the EMA and it's still pointing up, that's an uptrend. And that's easy to see, even if you can't find that correct trend line. And so the EMA is just a tool. And if if the EMA is going sideways and prices are consistently above and below it, well, we're not trending at all. We're just range bound, and you got to be careful. And you only you can trade it both ways, and that's what we use the EMA for. So anyway, I didn't even intend to get off on that tangent, but since we were talking about it, it was probably good to hear. But let me back out. We'll talk about the downtrend and then the reversal, and we'll go from there. 7 o'clock came. You had to be a little patient today because 7 o'clock came up through this uptrend here. This was a possibility here. You got a little bit of support across here, and then we just kind of, you can see that support right across there. And then we had that little drop below, but that's just such a big bar. You had to really wait for that to close, and it closes on it's very high right into this other high. And you really probably couldn't have got in that trade anyway up here because it gapped over and just kept going up before it backed up. And once it starts backing up after a big move like that without continuing on, you got to be real careful. So I'd want to know that this correction had played out before I entered. I just wouldn't want to enter way up there. But that's a possibility. If you could have got in it, if it would have broke lower and turned and then went out the other side here, maybe. But I'd just wait. And you got a second entry here, but not a very good signal bar. But then finally it ticks lower here and turns up and goes out the other side. I like going long right there. One tick above the bar to the left of the signal bar. This is actually the signal bar, the big bullish one. It actually ticks lower and then turns up and goes out the other side. So I'd be okay. It's a higher low, and notice how everything's closing still above the EMA. But then you had a failure here. So if you didn't enter here on this first one, definitely enter here. And then it tries to come back again and bounces. I'd be less hesitant. I'd be more hesitant to enter right here, and less likely to enter here than I would have these first two. I wouldn't have any problem with these first two, but right here, this thing should have taken, you would expect it to have taken on off, but the fact that it came back yet again, but you're stacking up there, you got a little congestion, we're real close to the highs, the overnight highs, it's just a little iffy there. Actually, I think the overnight high is up here. Yeah, overnight high is up here, but still you're getting close to that. So, and we've turned down there before, so this is getting, I don't know if I would have entered here. Generally, when you go that low, that turn down that many times and don't make it, you're going to go higher. But I don't know that I'd want to enter there. We run on up, we test that same high, we turn down. You need to wait on a lower high, really. You might have entered here. There's not a lot of room back to the EMA there, so I don't think I would risk it. Even though we've had a close outside this little trend line and a new high, I'd wait for the lower high, which comes here, but not a very good signal bar. And notice how it bounces, but you get a new low there, first entry, and you get a second entry short right off the EMA. Nice little small bearish bar. I like entering there. When it didn't go lower and you got another one, you might enter off that one. I actually drew the trend line off that one. And then it bounces back again. But when you get that failed second entry long and it turns, and if it breaks below here, you probably got a trap now. And you can see how that rocketed down real quick. That's because people were trapped and knew they had to get out. And you'd be wanting to look for a minimum of a measured move like so. And you can see we got about a perfect measured move, and it just kind of went sideways and turns down again. Normally I'd like to see this one break higher here, but it's right off that key entry point. I drew this off the lows and drug it over, and it's right off that key entry point. And you can see where the bars are getting smaller and smaller, making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs every single time. That's a good sign that we're probably going to go lower. And, you don't know that it's going to do what it does. But if you'd have caught either one of these, you could have ridden this thing all the way to the lows. I mean, even if you just wrote it down to the overnight lows right here, um, I mean, that's a nice move, but this thing just continues to go. You really never got a close above another bar outside that trend line until we actually started another steeper trend, and we got to close outside it and a new low. And then we finally got this one. I don't even have it drawn. I didn't know it was going to need to be that long, but you finally got to close outside it and a new low, and then that's when prices reversed and off they go. So that one played out well. You also have an overshoot here too, um, on this bigger two-tiered channel, and so you really didn't have to get a close outside here and a new low. An overshoot sometimes when it's this oversold, it's just going to reverse when it finally finds. Because what'll happen is all of a sudden the shorts will realize, hey, the move is over. I got to get out or I'm going to get back all my profits. And you get these big moves like this that rocket up. And we just kind of went into this two-tier channel after that. There weren't a lot of opportunities down here low. I wouldn't enter. I just don't like entering way down here. It's been too far away from the EMA. Yeah, they all worked, but next time you take them, they won't. The better entry was to wait for a correction. And notice we get that here with a second entry short right here. Got a new low. You come up first entry. You come back with a second leg and second entry short. And then I didn't like entering in here. It's just too risky. This one's tempting because you do have a little bit away from the EMA and there's a lot of support across there. But this is just such a strong sell-off. Usually when you get a sell-off that strong, at some point you're going to attempt another leg down. Didn't happen today, but that's what usually happens. So I'm a little leery of trying to, don't try to catch a falling knife. But you can see that still, even on a very strong downtrend day, that a failed break lower still would have given you, and you can see how that rockets up. A lot of shorts started exiting there. I guarantee they were all loading up across here. When this thing broke lower, a lot of them probably jumped in right here because that's the way most, if you go read, heavens forbid if you do it, but I know a lot of you do. I've told you not to, but if you go read these forums and you read these trading strategies, they all tell you to sell down here. And you want, even if it's going lower, you don't want to sell down here because it's going to bounce almost every time. And you see that happen, and you see all these people that got short down here, look at it rocket up. That's because they all had to run for the door because they knew they were wrong. And then a bunch of them will try it again right here, and it comes down here and it bounces again, and then they finally all give up. And when it starts rocketing up here, all these people that were short say, oh, I'm going to take my profit and get out. And that's why you get these real sudden, I used to watch prices and it would just be so bearish, and I kept waiting for an entry, and then finally I'll say, okay, next time we come back and get a good setup to go short, I'm going short. And you go short on one of these two, and then next thing you know, it's rocketing out of there, and you're like, what the heck happened? But that's what happens is all these shorts get spooked. And they've all piled in here short. And when they get spooked, they all exit because they either afraid they're going to give their profit back or they're already taking the loss because they got short down in here. And that's what causes that. That's short covering, and it rockets up, and you'll see the same thing. And that's probably what happened here when this thing started accelerating to the downside. A lot of longs were exiting. They were getting the heck out. They were all getting burned. And so I really wasn't convinced that we were going higher until we came back to this trend line. And 90% of the time your trend line is right off the first two swings off the low, or if it's off the top, the first two swings off the top. This does look a little like a spiking channel, and I had at least one person draw it that way, but the price action didn't fit very well. But you can see this trend line is valid. Prices come back to it over and over until we finally get a break. We really get two legs up to a new high, and then we sell off again. So this trend line is definitely valid, and you can see how it fits neatly. Prices are, we weren't getting back up to it here, so it didn't look like it was fitting as neatly as what you would usually see, but that's just because this was not a real strong, this is a good trend, but it's just not a real strong one because we weren't even getting back up to the upper trend channel line. Most of the time we were barely getting above the EMA or staying below it until we got that break. So When it came back here and confirmed it here, you might have entered right here and you would have been safe, but there's a trend line working down right there, and that's the first close outside. And this has been a strong downtrend. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we didn't come back down and test this low. So I was leery. But when we turned down here and bounced instantly and go back up, it actually broke below this bar first and turned and went up and went out the other side. It doesn't really matter how it broke. You could just wait for that to close, and when if prices break above that, go along with it. And that's the way I'd play it, really. And again, you might enter there, but I'd be real leery of it with that strong downtrend and that being the first close outside. But it takes off and then it pulls back and you get a second entry long here with a nice bullish bar. And again, it goes lower, turns out the other side. You could have entered that either way. You get a higher low right here, another bullish bar. I made this one green, but it's real close. I mean, it's basically back to the EMA and the trend line. I just was a little taken aback when this didn't go much higher right here. I mean, usually, when you've come back to the trend line this many times, although this was just getting back into the original trend channel and the overnight low, so it didn't surprise me that it came back to test that again either. And that's probably why it didn't take off, and it did come back, because generally we'll test that a couple of times before people are convinced that, hey, it's holding, and then it goes higher again. So this is real close to being blue. It's just a first entry. It's close to those highs. There's a little resistance there. But if you understand what's going on here, that we're coming back to test the original overnight low, we pushed back through it and came back and tested it from the other side, which is exactly what you want to see, and you want to see it hold before you get long. So if you understood all that, you could argue for that to be blue. So it's real close. I'll leave it green, but you could argue for it to be blue. And we take on up here, and then we come back. And notice there is a second entry long right here. But again, you got this trend channel working down, and it's obvious it's in play. It's bouncing off the lows perfectly. It's bouncing off the highs perfectly. And you're back below the EMA. I don't think I would treat that as a failed second entry long and try to go short there, but I wouldn't get long there. And I'm not really crazy about getting long here, even though we did kind of close outside here and push to a new low. There's a little bit of congestion there. We're still closing below the EMA. I made it green, but generally you want to wait on a higher low, and we never really got one before we got into the 2 o'clock hour. Yeah, there's a higher low here, but that's not a very good setup. And then we're into the 2 o'clock hour. And I just don't see anything else there I like. So, yeah, not a lot of trades today. As much movement as there was. We got a lot of movement, but there's still not a lot of trades here. But there are several really good trades. I mean, if you caught one of these that you catch a runner on, you're set for the day. And you probably could have caught a runner on one of these as well. So, but otherwise, I mean, there wasn't much entry in here. You're just not wise to enter into this overnight low right here, and then you've been away from the EMA too long. You hate to sit there and watch it, and that's what really sucks people in and messes them up. They see this thing going down, 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 and they're waiting for their opportunity, and they really don't get a good one. And then finally they say, next time it comes back, I'm entering. And it comes back here, and then they procrastinate and say, well, maybe I need to wait, and then they see it take off again, and they say, okay, well, next time it comes back, I'm entering, and then it comes back and they enter down here somewhere. People generally, what happens is people want to see proof that it's going lower, and that's when they want to enter. But when it's already moved down here, the move has already happened when most people are thinking it's time to get in. You've got to learn to enter here on the correction and not down here. Because once it's proved it's going lower, the move's already over. And that's where people get really confused, and that's where common sense does not help you in trading. Common sense says, hey, wait and see when it's moving lower, and that's when you want to enter, but that's when you'll get burned every time. Even if it's going to keep going lower, or even if it's going to keep going higher and you're buying. You got to enter on these corrections. And notice where all the big moves happen at. Key entry point. Here's another one. This is a shorter term key entry point. Big move right here. Key entry point. Big move. Right here. Key entry point at the EMA and the midline. Look at this big move down here. Strong support. That's another key entry point. Big move right here off the trend line. Another decent move off the trend line. The next move at the trend line. So those key entry points is where all your big moves come from, and that's where you got to learn to try to enter, and that's what you're trying to learn to do, is spot where those areas are at and find them. Now somebody else had entered here, and he had his trend line. He had more of a, let me see if I can draw it. He had some kind of a, maybe he was off of those two. He had drawn this as a spiking channel. Maybe that was it right there. Let me just make these real dark so they're easier to see. But he had a trend line there. And then he had it over here at the top somewhere. About like that probably. And you could tighten that up. And it tends to fit a little better there. But he saw this as a second entry off of this flatter trend line. And I mean, that's a possibility. But 9 times out of 10, your trend line starts off the first 2 swings off the low or the first 2 swings off the high. But this does look a lot like a spiking channel. I can see why he likes that. His didn't look as good as mine does there. He drew it a little bit different, and he entered right here on this second entry. And I could see why you'd like that second entry under that case. But you still had this trend line coming down through there that you had to be a little bit concerned about, because there was no close outside of it, a new low. But yeah, if you entered there, you just misread it and got burned. It didn't go very far, but it went enough to stop you out, only to go take off and rock it up. And that's what happens if you can't be a little bit early or a little bit late with these entries. You got to learn to time them just right. And even today, sometimes I'm a little earlier, tad. I'm never late because I know when I'm late, and it's easy to spot when you're late. But sometimes you're going to be early just because you misread it a little bit, and that even happens to me occasionally. I'm early, and I make a mistake. So generally, if I do make a mistake, that's what it is. I misread it a little bit, and I'm a little bit early, because sometimes it will just make one more little jot, and they're really just stopped running is what they're doing. They dropped this down here and ran all the stops of people that were getting long and scared them out, and then it rockets right back up. And people were probably trying to pick tops, but you can tell they trapped some people by how quickly that rockets back up. I mean, that's probably the biggest move, quickest out of all this, except for this one right here. The rest of these took off, but they didn't rocket up like that did. Make that a little bigger so it's easier to see. But yeah, mine fits a little better than his did. I'm not sure exactly how he drew his. I can't draw mine exactly the same. Maybe it was more like that right there. And you weren't getting some touches in here, and then you weren't really getting some touches up here. And, when you got it right, it generally, every time prices touch one of these, the trend line, it turns up. If it touches and you can see it working off my midline, both sides, all the way up and down. And we never did get back up to this line very much, but when it was up here, you can see it working off of it perfect. So you can be off a little bit, and most of the time it won't make that big a difference. Even if you drew it like me, you could have still said, hey, I like this second entry. It's right there at the key entry point, and taken it. So you could have gotten burned either way. I mean, that's definitely a tempting trade, especially when this thing's been working up all day and that's your first close outside. But here's your only real clue, is that here's your trend channel line, and notice even though we were getting above the EMA, we weren't, each time we got above it, we weren't moving as high as we did the previous time, and we're getting further and further away from this until we finally get a break. And then we run to a new high, and we actually made one more run, which a lot of times it'll make 2 legs up, and then we sold off. So it kind of played out perfectly. But anyway, that's 25 minutes for today, more than enough. I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap up the week. Again, no chart lessons on Fridays. I'll be back again to do it Monday, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.